Hey, Hydro Veterinary Habits. How you guys doing? Hey, Angela. Thanks for joining me. So for those of you that are out there and you're listening, give us a little thumbs up. Tell us from where in the world you're watching. And for those of you that are watching the recording, you can still post questions, and Angela and myself will be coming back on to answer them at a later stage. Angela, thanks so much for joining me. So today we're going to be chatting about getting vet referrals. And all know, and you're going to have to think back because you've been in practice for a long time. But, you know, when you first start off, this is one of the hardest things to do is to get those vets referring to you. So before we start, though, do you want to just do a quick little introduction for the listeners? Just tell them about who you are and where you're from.
Okay, I'm Angela Griffiths. I'm a certified canine rehabilitation practitioner. I'm the owner of Greyfriars, Veterinary Rehabilitation Referrals. We've been open for 20 years. Before rehab was even a word, and when vet physios were just starting out. So and things have changed massively since we started, and so have we. We've gone from hydro to a full hospital inpatient care, and really sort of specialist level work, but the basic work we do all day every day is hydrotherapy and physiotherapy.
Awesome. So I see we've got someone from Switzerland. Awesome. Thanks, guys, for joining us. Please, if you've got questions about this, and even if you've got advice or any tips, because this is actually Angela and myself talking about this topic, but I'm sure there are loads of you that also have some advice and tips to offer. So post them in the comments. If you've got questions, post them. And we're going to have a big discussion about how to get more vets to refer to us. So, Angela, let's start off and chat about, there are different types of vets. So we have vets that are open to veterinary rehabilitation and hydrotherapy that are not referring to anybody. And then there are vets that are maybe just not referring to us, right? So how do we tackle these two different types of vets? Because, I mean, we need to be able to try and get them to be aware of us. That's really the biggest thing, right?
Yeah, so if we take the vets that are open to it, what they really want to know is that you are the right person to refer to. My experience is very often the demand for referral is driven by the client saying, what else can we do? There must be more we can do. Where can I go? And then those vets that are positive, some of them will fall into a gift. They'll be quite passive in their referring and just give the clients a choice of 4 or 5 places to go. And what really we need to work on is making sure that we are the place that they suggest at the top of the list that the client should go to, especially if you have a few centres in an area. And I think what really marks you out is your reputation, your professionalism, your qualifications. But if you don't tell them about that, they don't know. We shouldn't be too shy to say we are the best or very good at what we do, and why. Why does it matter who they refer to?
Yeah, so there's ones that actually are open to veterinary rehabilitation, hydrotherapy. Then those are ones that we can directly work with. So we can try and build relationships with them. We can maybe drop in and go and see them, maybe do some lunch and learns, which we're going to get into a little bit later. And then you have those ones that are not open at all. So I can remember when I first opened my practice, and I remember stopping off at the vet, trying to tell them about the practice and the underwater treadmill, which I was so proud about. And I can remember this vet actually, and I overheard him. He was like, just tell her to take her crystals and smoke, and he had some funny comment like that and get out, And it was so hard. I mean, I remember just feeling absolutely gutted about it. And so those ones, sometimes when you have a vet like that is just completely against what we do, how have you tackled those? Have you just sort of said, okay, I'm not even going to work with you, I'm not even going to try this, or have you pushed on and tried to try and get them on your side?
I don't know. I probably, my feeling is if they're so negative, they don't understand the benefits, they're not interested in learning, I'm probably not going to beat my head against a brick wall. Very much they're the ones that will fall back on some legal reason why they can't sign the paperwork, even if clients ask to come to you. They'll be quite blocking and quite negative. Yeah. And then sometimes they have a really difficult case, they've got nothing else to throw at it, and they go, And I've even heard the phrase, we overheard a similar phrase, a referral specialist, one of my members of staff, and they said, send it to Greyfriars, that's a dumping ground, meaning we can't do anything with this dog, let's just dump it on them and make it their problem. But then sometimes these dogs come and you do a fab job with them and they can't believe how pleased the clients are with the results, and they can't believe the results that you get. And then a light bulb goes on. But there are others that you are never going to win with. You won't change their mind. You know, really, they're going to be a pretty negative person about a lot of things, I think. Now, either they've had a bad experience, which you can understand, or they just see it as just more work, too much hassle, not interested. And really, those are the vets that are not doing their best for their clients, I feel. It doesn't matter what I say, I am not going to change their mind. So actually, I'll put my efforts more into the ones that are more positive, that are saying, tell me more, or, you know, I'd like to pop in and visit your facility sometime. And they maybe never make it because they're always so busy and it's the last thing on the list. But at least you've had some encouragement that they'd like to work with you, you know. So that may be a bit defeatist, but certainly for us, there's a lot of vets out there, and some of the older ones, you're just simply not going to change their mind, and you can't make them sign the bit of paper. And for us, we can't work without a vet referral and medical history. I spoke to a young, fairly new hydrotherapist this week, and the vet was pretty well, I'll sign it. It was a really difficult case, actually. It had some neurological problems. It also had laryngeal paralysis, but the vet referral just simply said OA, shoulders, elbows and hips. No mention of the laryngeal paralysis, no mention of collapsing. And they didn't want to share the medical history because, and they actually said to her, you won't understand it. And yet they're negligent in not giving you enough information to do your job. Good for her. She's gone back at them and said, look, I'm qualified in what I do. I'm educated. I've been doing this for a few years. Yes, I'm new at this practice. I want to do a good job and I can't see this dog without it. So I think one of the tricks is being consistent with asking for that medical history, asking for the vet referral. Yes, they can send dogs to places where they're not asking for that. And the approach I've always taken with them, you know, that we're a bit of a pain in the butt is, well, surely it's better that we're a bit of a pain in the butt and I'm asking these questions. Do you really want your patients going to somewhere where they're not going to be interested in really what's wrong with the dog, what are the worries that we have, and how to best look after them? So sometimes you can switch them by just being utterly consistent. I am not going to touch this patient without you doing your job properly. And you can feel quite worried about standing your ground with that. But my experience has been, if you do, and if you're consistent, eventually things kind of turn your way because you're seen as being the place that has standards and are not going to drop those standards just because it's a job, it's a money, etc. coming in. But that's hard to do in tough times.
Yeah, so we go back to those two. So we've got the vet who's a bit more open, and then we've got the one that's not so open. It's probably better just to focus your time, because we don't have a lot of time, on the ones that are open. So if you get completely lost, just know, like, if you've got a time, yes, keep going. But if you don't, just focus on the ones that you're more likely to get referrals from.
Totally.
And those ones I found that were completely against it. You know, it came from a lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
So they actually just didn't know what we did. And that is a little bit daunting for vets, because a vet is supposed to know everything about every animal, right? So, and this is, I mean, my husband will, like, we'll be at a barbecue or braai or something, you know, and there'll be like a frog or a spider or something, and then he'll be like, somebody will say, oh, I wonder what type it is. He'll go, let's just ask Megs. And I'll be like, well, how will I know? And then like, you're a vet, you know? So they're supposed to know everything. And so we have that feeling, you know. So obviously we have this feeling that we're supposed to know everything about everything. So then when somebody comes in and wants to speak to us about something that we do not know about, okay, then this is what I think. Because I think their reaction is just no, you know, because it's an uncomfortable place for them to be, because they didn't study about it. So, you know, and even still now there are some universities where they're not taught about hydrotherapy. So they don't know about it. And you know, they might initially think it's just us putting, you know, animals in water and they're spinning their legs. But then when we start to have conversations and talk about more sort of complicated things that we're doing, and the water levels and this and that, and then they start to panic because they're like, well, I can't actually be a part of this conversation. So sometimes I think, this is my opinion, is that maybe it's just a sort of, I don't know enough about that, and I just think I'm going to stay away from it. So
I agree with you. I totally agree with that. And sometimes the vets that I find most difficult to get referrals from are baby vets, new vets, first year or two. They're either really positive because they've actually, all through university, all through their training, been very interested in rehab and what else can I do and what complementary therapies work well with Western medicine, etc. So they've either got that mindset or they're terrified. And as you say, they don't want to sign a bit of paper, and it's their fault when it goes wrong. So it's easier to do, it's the civil servant thing, isn't it? Do nothing and you won't get into trouble. And we kind of need to take that pressure off them and say, look, we're competent, we're knowledgeable, we're going to look after your patient. But the baby vets definitely are scared of their shadow because, they've gone through university being told you do one thing wrong, you're going to be sued or you never work for the rest of your life. And then you've got the other scale, the older vets that this is new to, and they just get into retirement. They don't really want to learn new, and that's a bit pat really, because there's some wonderful older vets who, they're fantastic because of their experience. And weirdly, I find it easier to pick up the phone and talk to a referral specialist, orthopedic or neuro, who teaches. And these are people that teach, they're curious, they're training people all the time, and they're really positive, and it's easier to speak to them and how busy are these people than it is to get a junior vet to come to reception and speak to you at some point in a 12-hour day. So there's a big difference in attitudes to how threatening we are, and how and maybe those more senior vets are not threatened because they know stuff, so there's a big difference in attitudes, and personalities come into it as well, don't they?
For sure. So let's chat about, what does the vet want to know, all right? So the vet has their patient, and they will only send their patient to someone who they trust, okay? And this is something that hydrotherapists need to know. So you can't just drop off a pamphlet and then think that people are going to refer to you, okay? So people trust other people when they know more about you, and generally when they have a relationship with you, okay? So when you can build a relationship with somebody, then they're more likely to refer to you. And that's why stopping off and meeting them or doing lunch and learns or those kind of things help, because then you get to know the people as people, and they also get to know more about you. So the other thing to do is to show that you are competent, like you mentioned, that you're a professional. And so those are things that they want to know, like, are you all those things? And sometimes what I think happens is, let's say a vet's not referring to you, but it comes through the pet owner. Then the pet owner, says, please, can you sign the form? And then, so that the vet wasn't the one who initiated the referral. And then eventually the vet gets enough feedback from you through your vet reports or whatever the way that you're communicating, and through the pet owners. And then they start to build up some trust, because they're getting social proof from the pet owners saying, oh, they're good, she knows what she's doing, oh, I was so impressed with her or him, or, and then eventually they start to refer. They actually think, well, I've got great feedback from them. So sometimes they might just test you out a little bit. But the main thing really is building that trust. How have you found in the past, like, the ways in which you have increased that trust and built those relationships with vets?
I think, like you say, by doing vet reports back, by being communicative. With some of the practices, we've offered to do lunch and learns, and they have to do their CPD hours. So you're offering to come in, bring pizza and talk to them. And it's really quite difficult often for the practice to stop and just come together, and you've just got to put up with the fact that you haven't got a lecture room, you've got the edge of a desk, and you've got 20 minutes to make an impression. And my experience is just tell them the basics about hydro, how it works, what you do, what your facilities are. but also make sure they understand that you are qualified, you're competent, you're members of a professional organisation, that you're required to do CPD, and that you're insured for the work you do. And what I find is they're a bit like arms folded, I'm busy, I've got stuff to do. And then they get curious because they're people that like to learn. And then they say, I've got this dog. Do you think, you know, you could help? And I've had that experience. There was one talk I did up in Scotland and everyone was tired. It's a long way to drive. It's a Friday night in the winter and dark, and two vets sort of fell asleep in front of me, which is hardly encouraging. But they were kind of listening. And then it was interesting. We got to tea break and 3 or 4 came up. They didn't want to talk in front of all the others. And they were saying, look, I've got this dog, you know, sort of, do I send it to you when it goes off its legs, a dog with DM? And I'm saying, no, like, you need to send it to me now, you know. So it's what to refer, when to refer, how early do we like to see dogs, and prioritize which cases you can help with. So tell them about the hydro, tell them about you, tell them about why you're competent and professional in your job, and then say, look, this is what I can help you with. And the big in with, especially first opinion GP vets, is those older dogs, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, who they're struggling to care for. So they run out of medication options. The dogs are slowing down. The owners want more. You know, so they're kind of like stuck. There's not a lot else they can do, but we can do supportive care 3, 4, 5 years for those dogs. So those difficult dogs that their sort of heart sinks a bit when they come into the practice because they run out of medication options, as I say, you can help with those and give feedback. And they're often the ones that you show a real improvement in over 6 to 8 weeks and they're surprised. The DM dogs, again, they can't offer them anything. They can't do anything for them. Again, we can help with keeping the dog going, keeping them more comfortable, giving feedback, providing aids like boots, harnesses, things like that. So they might not even realize that just with mobility aids, advice to client, keeping an eye on the dog, you know, and sending the dog back regularly if you think there's a urine, you know, so we've got a urine infection or we're seeing sores developing, things like that. I find build trust where you don't just carry on swimming the dog, you actually go, I'm not happy, the dog needs to go back to the vets. And then they start to realize you spot things and you spot them quite quickly. So give them some solutions to some of their problems that are really difficult within general practice when you've got 10-minute consultations per dog.
Yeah, so I think one of the things which is really useful is like if you're there at a practice ever, or if you're ever in front of a vet and you're having a conversation, is to actually ask them, do you have any cases at the moment which really musculoskeletal cases that which you are really struggling with that I could help with? And then they'll think about their cases that are troubling them, because I can tell you they're on their mind. They're thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to say to Mrs. Jones? She's going to phone again. And what am I going to say to her? And then the vet will say, yeah, Fluffy, I've got this case and this is what's happening. Can you help? And then you'll say, yes, I can. And then they'll say, okay, I'm going to refer that case to you, because they've got that client and they're worried about that patient. They don't know what to do. The client's bothering them and they run out of options. And so actually asking them, what are your cases you're struggling with right now? Those will be the ones that they'll think, okay, great, pass this one over. If you can help, you know, and that'll be your first case that they refer. If you ever have that opportunity to be standing in front of a vet and you're having this conversation, ask them that, because you want to take away those problems. And then when you are that person that then sorts that case out and you give them feedback and the pet owner gives them feedback, then what happens is every time they see a similar case, then they will think, oh, I can refer these cases. These are the ones that I can refer. And then it will start to build up.
And also they'll start to refer them to you earlier. So instead of getting these dogs when they're going off their legs, you know, the option is euthanasia or go to hydro and try it. We want to see them 2 years before that. The DM dogs, I don't want to see them when they can't walk anymore. I want to see them when they're still ambulatory and we can use water treadmill and then go to pool, and we still have those options. So they start to refer earlier and they start to refer more. But, you know, it's a hard one to crack, and they'll send you the most difficult cases, like you say, Megan, because they're the ones that are keeping them awake at night, or Mrs. Jones, as you say, is going to be back in 7 days' time, and you've still got nothing more to offer. You run out of prescription options or whatever, and you tried everything. So yeah, those are the difficult ones. And if you can show any improvement in a dog that they don't expect to see any improvement at all, it's amazing. I mean, we've had dogs where, you know, it literally has been euthanasia, and it's on the nose, euthanasia, or try going to Greyfriars. And my clients make me laugh because they walk in with the dog on the lead going, oh, still alive, still alive. And they love going back to the vet and go, look, you told me 6 months ago we're at the end. And that's great. I'm sure the vet takes the joke quite well. I would. So it's just great that the client feels that I've helped my dog as well. And that feeds back to the vet, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, you know, one of the things I always recommend is to actually have a look where your practice is, and then locate all the veterinary practice within a reasonable radius around you. So you can actually just print a map off the internet, and then put them basically where there are all those practices. And you need to try and pop in and see those practices. And this is something I think that vet rehabbers and hydrotherapists, we all just sort of avoid. Like, there's always something better to do than to drop in the vets, but you just have to do it every week. So you have to say, I'm going to do 2 a week. And when you pop in there, usually what will happen is you'll get blocked. So you might just be lucky and walk into the entrance and the waiting area, and the vet is somehow just there talking to the receptionist, and you might get to speak to them. Otherwise, you speak to the receptionist. And I used to have a little book. And it was a little book that I kept in my car. And what I would do is every time I went into a practice, I would take note of the receptionist's name. So I'd introduce myself to them, what they look like, and generally have a conversation with them. If they told me about their dog, because often they would bring up
their dog. Yeah.
And then I would say, you know, you're welcome to bring your dog for a free underwater treadmill or free assessment, and do something for them, basically, because then that receptionist will go back and speak to the vet if you can't, you know, get into the vet, but just to help them out. And in this little book, every single time I went in, you'd find there probably 2 receptionists, and they're the gatekeepers. They're the ones that give you access to the vet. So you actually have to work on them first. If you're lucky enough to get to the vet, great. If you're not, then you've got to work on them. And then you might phone up and just say, hey, I just wanted to let you know that there is a lecture happening about hydrotherapy. I thought that the vets and vet nurses might be interested at the practice. If you know someone is talking about, you know, whatever, any reason, phone them. And then when they pick up the phone and they say, oh, hey, it's Denise, then you say, hey, Denise, how's your Dachshund doing? You know, and you have that conversation and just build relationships, because you'll eventually get to know those people. And then once you get to know the receptionist, you'll start to get to know the vets, and you'll get into the practice.
And I would say the nurses as well. The nurses very often want to bring their dogs to you. Do you want to offer vet nurse discount? Because if those nurses are coming to you and they're seeing you regularly, and they'll see how you work and the other clients you have and the other patients you have, and they're going to take that back to the practice as well. And often the nurses, again, are more open, and you know, they want to bring their dogs to you. So as you say, if you say, you know, would you guys like to come down and see the facilities? Perhaps bring 4 of the practice dogs down and we'll swim them with you, you know, and they love it. It's a fun evening. And it gives you time to have those conversations. Like you say, there's one-to-one conversations where you all become people, and you go, oh, you start talking about cases and they talk about theirs. And now you've got a relationship, haven't you? And they remember you when they need some help.
But you really got to be intentional about it. And that's the thing. That, like, you know, the book. Well, I mean, maybe you guys are good at remembering names, but like those kind of things, because I usually, when I went in, I was so nervous, you know, and you know, you say, hello, and then I actually had to remember the person's name and then sit down and quickly write it when I got back into the car. So yeah, you really got to have a plan with it. So it's not just something that you do once every 6 months. It's something that you do every week or every 2 weeks. You say, on a Friday afternoon or a Thursday afternoon, I'm going to make sure that I stop in at these vet practices. And then you've got to find reasons to pop in. So whatever it may be, maybe there is a charity walk or something, and there's a poster, and you get a poster and you say, I'm going to go drop it off with the vet and say, hey, I thought you guys might be interested in this. Whatever you can think of, you pop in and go speak to them.
Go and buy some treats, go and buy a toy, and you've got make sure you're wearing your uniform, and they go, oh, you're from Greyfriars, whatever. But you're better at this, way better at this than I am, and much more sort of sales bullshit. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't come. I'm good at selling stuff for other people, and if I care about the dog, but it doesn't come naturally. And I think we're both quite outgoing. I don't mind walking in and talking to anyone nowadays, but a few years ago I might not have been so keen. And I think we've really got to find ways for people who are less confident. And one of the reasons they feel less confident is they feel quite new or insecure in their knowledge. I have it with a lot of my students that are starting up pretty soon in business, and they're, what they're freaking out about is they don't want to say the wrong word or call something the wrong thing. And I just say, look, the vet doesn't know, the vet knows you're not a vet. They're not expecting you to know everything they do, but don't trip yourself up by being too clever and trying to talk about things you don't know about either, because it's very easy to make yourself look a bit daft. So stick to what you know, and be confident about it and confident about your knowledge, but don't stray into areas that you're not competent to have a discussion about. If you're not sure of the word, say something else, go in a different direction. But it freaks them out that they're going to call the greater trochanter, something else, or the lateral malleolus, and then they're freaked out because they got the anatomy wrong. So it's just kind of, no one's expecting you to be a vet when you walk in the door. You've got the knowledge of a hydrotherapist or physio or rehab practitioner, but not full vet knowledge. No one's trying to catch you out. Most people are actually pretty friendly when it comes down to it. And like you say, Megan, if you're offering them something that will help, or you're saying, like, why don't we just have a fun evening? I mean, obviously it's impossible at the moment in the UK, and pretty difficult in South Africa too. But when things get better next year, that's got to be the time we need to get out there, and we need to get talking to people again and say, how was it for you? How's business? Is there anything we can do to help you?
Yeah, so I mean, I know that it's daunting for some people to go there, and don't get me wrong, like, it was daunting for me, but I just knew that I had to do it. And so unfortunately, like, when you have your own practice, there are things that you just have to do, but you don't have to go. So like, I think that popping in to see a vet or picking up the phone and phoning a vet compared to doing a lunch and learn is that's a little bit easier, right? So you've got to just choose the things that are a little bit easier to start off with. And if I think about myself now, when I first started, I was so nervous, but then it became easier. And it's the same with lecture. It's so nerve-wracking in the beginning, and then it just becomes easier. So the more you do it, the more confident you become. So for the online pet health members, we've got somebody actually doing some training for us on how to do lunch and learns, and I think that's in the next 2 months. Time in the business basics. So we will be doing some specific training on the lunch and learns, which I think will be really, really interesting. So yeah. Angela, just chatting about getting vet referrals, so if I think about it, we obviously often are trying to get new clients. So it's not often we have a practice that is so fully booked that we're not even worrying about getting new clients. So one of the challenges is always, how do I get a constant influx of new clients into the practice? And there's sort of two ways or two areas which we can look at. So we can look at, the one is referrals, and the other one is pet owners. So trying to actually just directly target the pet owners. And I think what happens is, because the vet side, because it's usually the vets that are referring, it's not the only place you can get referrals, and which we can touch on. But because it's so daunting, and it means putting yourself out there, and means you maybe being a bit vulnerable, what people tend to do is just say, I'm just going to leave that, and I'm going to focus on the pet owner. And the reason I don't think this is the right thing is because for my practice, I found, I used to do both, but what I found was the vet referrals gave a constant stream of new clients with very little work once you got that relationship.
Yeah, true.
I don't know if that's something that you found.
Yes, it is. And what's quite interesting is to do a review of where your clients are coming from. So actually have a database that lets you review how long they've been clients, do they have multiple dogs with you, and which vets they're with. And it's quite interesting how many of your clients will come from quite a small pool of vets, which then tells you, actually, you're right, that those referrals are coming from those vets, and you've got a constant stream of dogs coming to you, or cats as well sometimes. You can get different referrals from different vets as well. So obviously GP first opinion, you're getting your older dogs, geriatric dogs, multi-joint OA, quite often your elbow and hip dysplasia dogs. But don't forget that those GP practices are going to be struggling with, say, dogs that have had orthopedic surgery, maybe not with them, but then they're sent back and they have to look after them, and there's no rehab plan, and there's no sort of guidance really to the client. Once the dogs, we've had quite a lot of this over the last lockdown period, where dogs have just simply been handed back on the evening of surgery or next day. The report goes to their first opinion vet, and that's it. They're on their own, you know, and they might not have a huge amount of experience of how to rehab those dogs. So that's an area where we're definitely very much able to help with them, because potentially we've got more experience of rehab, you know, if you've been going for a few years, more experience of seeing more patients with TPLOs, TTAs, or whatever than perhaps that vet has, you know, if they're a newer vet. So so there's those post-op vets that are specialist post-op pets or dogs that have been referred back now to the care of the GP vet. So they're a real pool of quite difficult dogs for the first opinion vets when they're not progressing. You know, do they send them back to the specialist, or do they send them to you for some help? But I suppose we're slightly unusual in our practice in that we're surrounded by so many specialists. So we get a lot of orthopedic and neurological referrals at what I would call the higher or more difficult level. But what you have to realize is that obviously if they walk out and they're fine, you won't be seeing them. The ones you see are the ones that are failing to progress, or that they're having difficulty with. Most of the vets won't refer to you for post-op care if everything's going perfectly well.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're fortunate enough to have a referral center, veterinary center close by to you, that's a really great one to target. Like, so if you can actually make connection with them and build relationships there, because those surgical cases and those cases like the paralyzed dogs, you know, those are a constant source. I mean, because they're just doing ops every single day. So if you're not fortunate enough to have a referral center close by to you, there will be vets that are specializing in surgery. So the ones that are doing more surgery, and you need to find out who those ones are, and then you need to be there to support them. So to be able to, and like Angela says, I think sometimes they're not necessarily going to refer to you just because they've had a cruciate op. So those are they usually start referring all the ones that are not doing so well. You know, when their op didn't do so well, then they need you to try and sort it out. And I see somebody said, there was a comment here. So the greatest thing that can happen to you is when the wife of a veterinarian comes to therapy with your dog, and the dog is getting better and better. And then one day the doctor is in front of the door with a statement, now he wants to know what I'm doing because he's seeing the dog is doing better every day. He didn't know they had an underwater treadmill.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Yeah, and I've had the same. It's been the wives that are coming. I tell you what's really great is when the vet brings their own dog, because they're struggling, and now they've run out of options for their own dog. I've got one coming next week, actually. So yeah, that's always pretty good. And then obviously if you do it, I mean, it's pretty scary as well, because if you mess up, it's a big mess up if the vet's in front of you. And also you're going to spend half an hour with them asking you questions all the way through. So you'd better know how to read up on their dog's condition. But great, if you do a good job with their dog, they're going to send every dog to you, aren't they?
Yeah, well, those are the ones that I've actually converted that were completely anti. So that particular vet that chased me out, his dog actually was paralyzed and had op and still paralyzed, and eventually came to me in desperation because the referral vet that did the op said he must come. So yeah, and I got the dog walking again, and that was it. She referred to me from then on. Yeah, so those are the ones that you can really, you can change them and turn them. So one of the things that I wanted to chat about is, you know, one of the things that vets like is when they look good. Okay, and that's why when you are potentially speaking to them about a topic that they don't know about, it doesn't make them look good. It doesn't make them feel good. And so one of the suggestions that I have, and which I used to do, was I used to try and use the pet owner to get back and try and help me to build that bridge between me and the vet. So especially that vet that I was struggling to get on the phone with, or struggling to get any replies to when I was just non-communicative. They may be referring, or more actually the pet owner is actually saying to them, I want to go there. And so to try and get that relationship. And what I used to do is I used to say to the pet owner, and you know, lately I've really been thinking about this, thinking about why I was getting referrals and how I get them in order to be able to help the vet rehab community. And one of the things that I realized that I always used to do is, you know, being a vet, when another vet refers to you, that vet is always worried that you're going to take away their clients or something. So as a vet, I always had to say to them, you know, I work together with your primary vets. This is what I do. So if your dog has a skin problem or full anal glands, so I just said, no, I'm not doing that. Nail clipping, no, I don't do that. So I didn't do any of those fear things. And I just said, I don't do that. I'll send you back. And an ear problem or whatever, any of those problems, I will refer you back to your primary veterinarian. And I had to say that from the very beginning. And then I would say, you know, we work together. So Dr. So-and-so and myself work together, and I communicate, and we'll send reports, and we'll be in communication throughout the treatment of Fluffy. So you, just so that you know that. And I think that is something that is really, really useful if vet rehabbers can say that in the beginning of their consult, to actually make a point of saying we work together, because then it really shows that there's a team. And then what I used to do is I used to say, you know, if I sent a vet report, I would say I've been in communication, because I had, with Dr. Hubert, whatever his name is, and he is fully aware of what's happening, and I've told him how happy I am with Fluffy's progress. Next time you go to see him, maybe just mention it to him and have a discussion with him. He'd really love to chat to you about it. And then what they would do is when they go for their vaccination or for their nail clipping or whatever, and say, oh, I believe Dr. Kelly and you, or for them it'll just be whatever your name is, and say that you've been discussing and you've heard all this information about how well Fluffy's doing, and I'm so happy, and Megan is so great, and they have this conversation. And then what it does is two things. One is it makes the vet look good, because the vet now looks good in the pet owner's eyes, because they are communicating, they're working together. Wow, what a great team that you guys have got. And it makes the hydrotherapist or vet rehabber look good, because the pet owner is then actually singing your praises. And and it makes the vet feel good that they've been included. You know, so that you are actually including them in this decision and in the whole thing, so that they don't feel like they're losing their client to you. And that used to work really, really well. And if I knew that vet well and I had a good opinion of them, I would always say, oh, you're in such good hands with whoever. And then the pet owner would go back and say, you know, Megan speaks so highly of you and whatever. And then they'd be like, oh, I like this Megan. She's cool. And then that would help to establish those relationships. So obviously you're not going to say things about a vet that you don't know. So like, you know, you've got to be authentic. So you really got to think that they're a good vet, or you really think that they're in good hands, you know.
I had exactly that today, where unfortunately a client's dog passed away. We sort of pushed them to get to a referral specialist, because basically we had acute on chronic disc, it turned out to be, but it was totally the right thing to send them that way. But what was nice when they came to see me today was to hear that the specialist had said, yeah, we always go to Greyfriars or see Angela, and how well they look after their clients, and really singing our praises. And we'd done it mutually the other way around, that I'd sort of said, look, you must go to this place because I think they'll look after you the best. You have to be careful about that, and I try not to do it too often, but there are certain cases where you really need them to go and get a referral. It can't wait, and in this case sadly turned out to be right. But what's nice to hear is that the neuro specialist is sending those compliments back to us, and yeah, it's nice. And also the clients feel good because they feel that you are a team and you've both got, you know, the dog's best interest at heart, you know?
Yeah. So another tip that I've got is that if you have one of those big referral centers, so they've got surgery there, what I managed to do is get my name and details on the bottom of their post-operative form. So and it took a long time. I just kept on saying, oh, did you put my name at the bottom, you know, and then a little bit about rehabilitation and whatever I do, if you're looking for hydrotherapy. So then it becomes the owner then who actually gets the post-operative form, they read it, and then they see the details, and then they'll phone you. And that, you obviously need that relationship with them, but that really, really helps. Because sometimes the vet, when they're discharging the patient, you know, they might forget to mention it, or a receptionist, nobody mentions it, and then they see it on that form. So we've got a comment here that says, our local ortho vet will not refer for hydrotherapy other than to ACPAT physios.
That's a difficult one. I assume that's a hydrotherapist writing it, but it could be a physio that's member of a different organisation. I do understand why some vets will only refer to an ACPAT physio, because those physios are members of the chart, you know, the chartered physios. I only work with ACPAT physios. So you've got a choice. It depends on where that question's coming from. If you're a hydrotherapist and you don't have a physio attached, then obviously, and you know that, and you want those referrals, perhaps you might consider working together with an ACPAT physio. Slightly, you could take it as the vet is actually taking some care about who they're referring to, and they do know some, you know, they do have some information about physio and hydro. Where I get very concerned is where vets will only refer to a physio because they think physios know about hydro. Now, some physios are trained in hydro and some have done extra training. In human world, you will have a physiotherapist who, if they're doing hydrotherapy, will actually do specialist training in hydro. And sometimes what you've got is physios that have not done hydrotherapy training and don't know very much about hydro, or how to handle a dog in the water, or how many people it takes, or how to do water treadmill. So I quite often have people come and train with us who are physios who want to learn more about that, because they also, and we haven't quite touched on this, the physios or vet physios are actually a good source of referrals as well. And often it's the vet referring to a physio, and then physio says, yes, I can do all of this for you, but you need hydrotherapy too, and I recommend you go to wherever. So they're actually a good, you know, as a good area, and those are the people you need to be friends with as well, because at least if the dogs are getting referred for physio, hydrotherapy very often is going to be part of that. So it's difficult. Okay, so you've answered. I don't know who I'm talking to, which is scary. I'm a hydro, but do work with an ACPAT physio, doesn't have hydro training. So that's exactly it. All of my physios, before they came to work for us, all spent time in the pool. Normally while they were still training, they didn't, sort of about a 6-month period. Because it's difficult for the physios to work with the hydrotherapists as a team if they don't know very much about what the team does and their knowledge levels as well. You can have, you know, a big difference in knowledge of hydrotherapists and education. You know, and someone who's 2 years in, who's got a level 3 certificate, is very different from someone who's 10 or 15 years in and they're level 4, level 5 qualified, and perhaps have other vet physio or rehab qualifications. So not all hydrotherapists are at the same level. What I would say is if you work with a physio, you're going to learn a lot, and you're going to learn a lot from each other, and it's that team thing. And together we're a much stronger team and have much more credibility when we're talking to the vets as well. Most of our dogs that are referred see our physio first, come up with a plan, they come for hydro. The physios are great at writing reports to the vets and saying, this is the plan, this is what we're going to do in hydro, and then we do our follow-up physio. So that also helps with getting really good reports to the vets as well. So I can understand not all physios are at the same level as well, and that concerns some of the vets. I think there's been some articles recently that are in vet world that have been unhelpful, to say the least.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it all comes down to that vet rehab team, right? And that's really what it's about, is that we're all working together. So I don't know if some of you have noticed, you'll see on some of the vet rehabbers and hydro vet rehabbers, you'll see in some of their Facebook profiles, they've got a green ring around it. And it says, I'm proud to be a part of a vet rehab team. And that's a frame that you can now add. And it's not about, you can actually be on your own. So you could be a physio working on your own, and you can be part of a vet rehab team if you have your own practice. And it's because you work together with vets, you work together with hydrotherapists, like you say, and you refer to hydrotherapists, and you work together with a whole vet rehab team, which is usually a vet, it might be a chiro, it might be a physio, it might be a hydrotherapist. All of you work together for the best interests of that animal. But, as you're talking now, we're confused as to who actually, say we have a physio, and like you say, some of them have maybe got hydrotherapy knowledge and others don't. So you can imagine for the vets how confusing it is.
Yeah, and this person on the remarks, Megan, this person has said the vet has no interest in how well qualified or experienced the hydrotherapists locally are. That's probably because they don't realise how much it matters. And they just think it's swimming dogs, and it doesn't matter who does it. So that's where the education comes in. And, you just got to keep plugging away and making, communicating. Get some newspaper articles if you can. Get someone to write an article for you and get it out locally or in a magazine explaining about qualifications and training and why it's so important. And I think we really need to, it's a bit double-edged, because if you explain the harm a hydrotherapist can cause, then it's going to freak the vet out even more, isn't it? But, you need to discuss that if we don't get things right, we can really mess up. If we get things really good, we can do a really good job. Therefore, we need experience, training, and qualifications.
Yeah, and what I would suggest is, getting in those newspapers is great for your credibility. So the vets will see it, and the pet owners will see it. So if there is a newspaper article, a pet owner might very well take it to a vet and say, oh, check this article out. And there's an instant credibility when you're in the media. So it doesn't matter even if you're in a blog, if you're in a magazine. And so it's something that I always recommend, is that you try and get yourself out there. And for those of you that are very introverted, you don't want to be maybe interviewed on a radio or on TV or something like that, you can write articles. You can approach the veterinary magazines, you can approach the pet owner magazines and write articles about hydrotherapy. And you can actually write it more like, what I would recommend is more from treating a specific condition, and then subtly just inside it, just say, there are qualified hydrotherapists. I think one of our biggest problems is obviously our field is very unregulated. And globally, this is an issue globally. And so because of that, it's very difficult for vets to know who are the right people to actually refer to. And so it's a global problem, and it's something, guys, that we are going to be addressing at the Vet Rehab Summit this year. We're looking at how can we improve the situation? How can we get vets to become aware of us and what we do? And how do we regulate this profession globally? Because there's certain countries that have got it and other countries that haven't, but it is a continual challenge. So sometimes we need to be a little bit understanding to the vets, because it's confusing for us. So who is who, because of all the different qualifications, and it must be.
And I think the membership organisations or registration organisations have a role to play here, and they should be supporting their members and getting that message out however they can, with conferences and again press articles, etc. They need to be supporting their members, and that, so then they're not advertising something as such. What they're saying is, we have standards and we promote those standards, and this is our role in the public field to support the quality of care that you give, and really pushing the vets towards certain organisations. So even with ACPAC, it's taken a very long time for the vets to understand that there's different kinds of physios, and perhaps some are more qualified than others. And the same really with the hydrotherapists, do they know that they should be looking for them to be members of NARC or CHA or IVRPT or whoever? I'll probably get slaughtered because I've forgotten about 3 other organisations, RAMP, etc. But it's really important that there are professional memberships and that the vets understand, you know, we could perhaps do some kind of poster that says, you know, this is what this means if this person's got this logo or they've got this membership. Why is that important? Why does it matter? You know?
Yeah, and I think all those associations actually need to work together. So think about all those associations that you mentioned. Now you're just talking about the UK, all right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's some countries that don't even have associations for hydrotherapy. Yeah. Okay, so they're just doing their own thing. But they probably need one. So if you're in a country and it doesn't have one, you might have to say, okay, I'm going to make one and start creating one. It is a growing field, so there are going to be more people. But I mean, my thoughts really is that we all need to come together and actually imagine if all 5 or 6 associations in the UK came together and said, let's work together to create awareness about what we do to the vets and come up with, you know, a PR plan and, you know, and all 5 of those associations with all their members and all their committee members put their heads together and actually created a plan. So challenging you guys.
Yeah, and you can't just sit back and, you know, expect everyone else to do it for you. I was a founder member of the National Association of Registered Canine Hydrotherapists, happily retired other than doing audits now, because things needed to get better and change. And it would have been a lot easier to not spend a year of my life with Kirsty Arthur, getting that organisation off the ground and running. And then madness, I helped to do it again in South Africa, a lot of input to the South African Association, and sort of in the background with advice and help also in Singapore, because once you've got enough people, then guys, you need to do it for yourselves. And I'm really proud of AACH, the Asian Association of Canine Hydrotherapists, because they've got a committee, they've worked hard, they've just got their website and Facebook up and everything. Now they can go to the vets as a group of people that says, we've got standards, we care about what we do. Please refer to people that are members of our organisation, because there is some inner regulation going on then. And there was nothing before this year. So I think we launched in October, November last year, and it's taken this long to get the committee and everything. You know, you start with a logo and an idea, but it's bloody hard work. But do you care enough to make a difference, or are you just going to concentrate on your thing? You know, where do you feel you fitting in the community, and can you make a difference to your local community? You know, even think about charity work as well, Megan. Is it like, what can you give back? And my experience is, if you give, it does come back. And I don't mean that in a soppy kind of a way, but it's that extra bit you do. Or that, I remember one time I was supposed to go and go to a fete, and it was a dog show, and I was so tired. All I wanted to do was go to bed. And it's like, I got up, washed myself, and went, damn, I really don't want to do this. Went up, got talking to someone, their dog had back problems. I talked about where they should go and the care they should go. And from that one dog going to that vet, we probably got another 20 or 30 referrals. And you just think, I'm glad I made that effort, but I'm glad mostly because that dog got the care it needed, and that it was a ridgeback, and that conversation would never have happened if I hadn't done it. So sleep's overrated, I find.
Guys, I want to let you know that at Vet Rehab Summit, I actually think we've got the greatest opportunity to get all of you guys together. So we have this awesome around the world networking. So we're going to have like a whole hour where everyone in different areas in the world are going to come into Zoom rooms, and then you're going to go off into smaller Zoom rooms depending on your location. And so that might be the ideal place for you guys to create these sort of ideas for associations. So get to know people in your area and then create a little association. So yeah, that's Vet Rehab Summit on the 14th of November, guys. It's our online conference. And this year it is just 1 day, not 3 days. So it'll be lots happening. So I'm not going to babble on about that now. But Angela, I just want to say thanks so much. Let's see if there are any more questions. Anyone have any questions for us? if you guys are listening to the recording, please, guys, post your questions. We're happy to answer them. And yeah, Angela, I just got a little message on my phone to say, don't forget about your meeting in 3 minutes time. So I've got a meeting. So
you freaked me out. I thought it was my meeting in 3 minutes time.
No,
so.
and you and I can talk forever. You know, I had a plan. This is going to be half an hour, and we're already at 1 hour in. And yeah, we could probably get a.
Absolutely. I haven't seen the time. I actually do have a meeting in 4 minutes time, so I've got to go.
So I hope you found this useful. And please, guys, if you have any other tips or advice for our hydrotherapy rehabbers, please share them, because this is what this platform is about. It's about sharing knowledge and helping one another and supporting one another. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your time.
Okay, bye.
Bye.